What if the secret to power is not to conquer more, but to offend less? We imagine the powerful as tyrants, feared, bold, unapologetic. But true dominance does not announce itself with thunder. It settles like fog. It enters rooms without stirring the air. It makes its presence felt without needing applause, noise, or blood. The greatest rulers in history did not stay in power by crushing enemies. They stayed in power by not creating them in the first place. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone lost power because they were too violent? Rare. But how many kings fell because they humiliated the wrong man once? In your quest to rise, you will be tempted to win loud, to speak hard, to let the world know your name. But the man who rises that way becomes a target. The man who moves subtly, who understands the deep law of resentment, becomes untouchable. Men forget the death of their father sooner than the loss of their patrimony. Machiavelli wrote, "Do you know what that means? It means people do not care about honor. They care about their pride, their money, their image. And if you take those from them, they will remember forever." Power does not rot from the outside. It is poisoned from within, through envy, silent vengeance, and the slow erosion of goodwill. Let us go back. Florence, Renaissance Italy. The courts were filled with smiles, gifts, and daggers under the table. It was never about how much land you held. It was about how many enemies you didn't make on the way to getting it, and how well you could hide the ones you had to. Now look at today. In your office, in your network, on social media. You think you're being bold, transparent, authentic, but you're bleeding power with every overstep, every unnecessary insult, every moment you choose dominance over diplomacy. What you think is strength is often the start of your undoing. Here's the first truth no one dares to tell you. Enemies are not born from conflict. They're born from wounds to the ego. A rival you beat may forget the scoreboard, but a rival you humiliated with a smirk, a joke, a public correction will sharpen his knife in silence, not for your crown, for your throat. The man who insults everyone to look strong dies surrounded by claps and assassins. You must master this art, the art of not making unnecessary enemies. You do not need to be liked, you do not need to be worshipped, but you must not be resented. There is a difference. The man who is merely feared can still be trusted. The man who is envied can still be respected. But the man who is resented is already burning from the inside out, because resentment has no cure, and unlike fear, it does not freeze the hand. It guides it, steady, patient, until the moment comes. So how do you hold your throne without drawing the blade of others? You disguise your victories. You share credit. You don't need to. You let others keep their illusions of power while you hold the reins behind the curtain. You make others feel important, not because they are, but because their ego demands it. And their ego is your best weapon. Let it breathe, and it becomes a leash. Choke it, and it becomes a bomb. Do you think the lion announces every time it eats? No. The lion lets the jungle speak for him. There was once a general who won every campaign but never claimed the glory. His emperor kept him close. Why? Because the general fed the ruler's image, not his own, and so he rose higher than any loudmouth who begged for medals. Your power must be felt, not flaunted. In politics, this is called plausible deniability. In business, it's called delegation. In life, it's called wisdom. Learn when to step back. Learn when to be the architect, not the monument. Monuments get built, then stared at, then destroyed by the next regime. But the architect, he draws the next empire. Never forget, the person who thinks they owe you nothing is more dangerous than the person who actually does. So don't collect enemies like trophies. Don't win arguments that don't matter. Don't show everyone how smart you are. Let fools win small battles, so you can win the war without firing a shot. Here's a rule. If the victory feeds your ego, but not your empire, let it go. Your goal is not to win. Your goal is to stay. And staying in power is not about domination. It's about invisibility, smoothness, lack of friction. Like oil through gears, you become essential without becoming the face. You become respected without becoming envied. You make no waves, but you move the entire tide. Ask yourself, how many people hate you, not because of what you did, but because of how you made them feel? That's where your danger lies. There is a principle more dangerous than revenge and more useful than fear. It is perception, not reality, not truth. Perception, because power, like gold, only has value when others believe in it. And belief can be guided without war, without blood, without force. You don't need to win every battle. You need them to believe you could. The man who never makes an enemy is not the man who apologizes. It is the man who never gives others a reason to choose war in the first place. And this, my friend, is not weakness, it is domination through direction. Like water finding the cracks, like a king whose silence carries more weight than a general's shout. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he didn't threaten the Senate, he simply moved, boldly, quietly. The threat was not in his words, but in his momentum. No insults, no declarations, just action, undeniable, irreversible, and from that moment, Rome belonged to him. Not because he demanded it, but because everyone saw the river behind him and understood he would never turn back. Now bring this into your world. The moment you raise your voice, you've already lost leverage. The moment you explain, you've already weakened the spell. The moment you crush someone publicly, you give birth to a secret army, because power built on humiliation invites vengeance. But power built on quiet respect, even if forced, creates a longer reign. Let them speak, let them bark. You don't need to answer, you don't even need to look. Your silence will do more damage than your sword, because here's the trap. Enemies don't always come from below. Sometimes they come from beside you. Friends turned observers, allies turned analysts. And the moment they feel unnecessary is the moment they begin to conspire. This is the second truth most men never learn. Those closest to your power must be fed, not with riches, not with praise, but with relevance. A man who feels irrelevant near you will make himself relevant against you. So you offer illusions, you offer purpose, you place them beside the throne, not on it, close enough to feel important, far enough to remain harmless. You speak less, you listen more, not because you care, but because they do. And that care is your grip. Tighten it too hard, and it snaps. Hold it loosely, and it obeys. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote of auxiliary arms, the soldiers you borrow from others, useful in a war, dangerous in peace. The same goes for friends, advisors, even family. When they no longer serve the war, they begin to question the peace. So what do? You divide their attention. You reward loyalty without making it obvious. You punish betrayal without public display. You do not react. You restructure, quietly. The office moves, the account closes. The invitation doesn't arrive, no explanation, no noise, just absence. Cold, calculated, and final. The man who makes an enemy forgets that grudges outlive failure, but the man who makes someone irrelevant, that person forgets themselves. Now let's pivot, because this is where most rulers slip. They believe staying in power means appearing strong, but appearance must serve reality, not override it. If you appear too strong, others will unite against you, even if you haven't wronged them, because survival hates imbalance. The tallest tree draws the first lightning. Do not be the tallest, be the oldest, rooted, silent, and full of poison if cut. You've seen this play out. The new manager who asserts himself too quickly. The influencer who claps back at every insult. The entrepreneur who flaunts every win. Loud, proud, dominant, until they vanish. Burned not by their failures, but by attention. Because attention breeds scrutiny. Scrutiny breeds resentment, and resentment breeds war. You are not here to be seen, you are here to remain. Let your moves be so smooth, no one sees the shift until they've already lost position. Let your tone be so neutral, no one knows if they've offended you. Let your presence be so grounded, no one imagines a world without you. That's how you hold power without making enemies. You dissolve threat, you don't remove it, you absorb it. And by the time they've built the courage to move against you, they've forgotten why they hated you to begin with. You must become the person no one wants to fight, not because you're too strong, but because you're too essential. So stop trying to win every room. Stop trying to dominate every interaction. Start planting doubt in their desire to act. Start becoming the person whose fall would create too much chaos, so they keep you standing. In the shadows of every empire is a man like this. He smiles without warmth. He listens without agreeing. He moves pieces on the board while others play for the crowd, and when the dust clears, he's still seated, untouched, unnamed, unforgettable. Be that man. There is a subtle shift that happens when a man gains power. At first, he watches everything, every whisper, every movement, every hand offered, and every hand withheld. He is careful, silent, calculated. But then, the sickness begins. He grows comfortable. He believes the game is over, because he has won a few rounds, and that's when the cracks form. Comfort is the enemy of strategy, because comfort breeds assumption, and assumption blinds the ruler to slow betrayal. You do not lose power because someone storms the gate. You lose it because someone you let in leaves it open, just enough for your enemy to slip through. Do you understand? The threat is never the loud critic. The threat is the quiet watcher. The one who studies you as you rise, smiles as you boast, nods as you expose your routines, and files it all away. So if you want to stay in power, you must not only avoid making enemies, you must also avoid making students. Never teach others how you lead. Never reveal your rhythm. Never show your whole pattern, because once they understand you, they can replace you. The strongest leaders are unreadable. Their reactions are neutral. Their habits are varied. Their praise is rare, and their anger is invisible. You think silence is weakness. No, silence is armor. It is a shield against prediction. Let's make this vivid. Picture a room of generals, each arguing over the best strategy for tomorrow's war. They are loud, passionate, certain, and then a single figure in the corner remains quiet, observing, calculating. Every eye eventually drifts to him, not because he spoke, but because he didn't. And when he finally lifts his head, his words rearrange the entire board. That is real power, not noise, presence. Now imagine your life as that room. In your workplace, your circle, your family, you will be tempted to speak, to correct, to perform. But each word you give away is a piece of yourself they get to study, predict, prepare for. You must become like smoke, hard to catch, impossible to strike, always present, never pinned down. This is where most men fail. They grow addicted to being understood, to being praised, to being seen, and so they keep revealing one detail here, one weakness there, and soon the myth dies, because every ruler lives or dies by the myth of unpredictability. Machiavelli understood this. The more people think they understand you, the more they feel equal to you, and once they feel equal, they stop obeying. So protect your mystique. Do not explain your decisions. Do not correct every lie. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Their confusion is your weapon, because people do not attack what they do not understand. They fear it, and when they fear you without cause, they create reasons. Let them. You don't need to justify power. You need to preserve it, and preservation requires distance. Now let's speak of rewards, because here lies another trap. Do not give favors publicly, unless you intend to weaken someone. Praise creates rivals, promotion breeds resentment, and generosity, if done without strategy, paints a target on your back. Instead, reward rarely and indirectly. Make them work for your approval, and once earned, make them uncertain if it was intentional. The most loyal allies are those who never feel secure, because their uncertainty fuels their effort. Their need to impress becomes your leash. You want to stay in power? Do not make enemies, but do not make friends either. Make loyalists, make dependents, make shadows who need your light, not because you offered it, but because they no longer remember how to survive without it. There is a predator in the wild who never roars, never chases. He simply sits still, eyes half closed. Every other animal feels it. The pressure, the weight, they move differently when he's near. That's you. When your presence changes behavior, you've won. But do not abuse it. Do not gloat. Do not punish unnecessarily. Each act of wrath costs political capital. Each enemy made by ego, by insult, by overreaction, is a step toward collapse. You are not here to prove strength. You are here to remain untouchable. So next time someone slanders you, wait. Let others defend you. Let silence do the bleeding. Next time someone undercuts you, smile. Move 3 steps around them. Make the world think it was their idea. That's the art, not dominance, design. Because when the time comes and they look around for someone to blame, to challenge, to overthrow, your name is not on their tongue. Your shadow, maybe, but not your face. And that is power, pure, silent, permanent. Power, once secured, must be preserved, not through force but through fabric, the invisible threads that tie your presence to their peace. The moment people believe that your removal would not affect the order is the moment your crown begins to loosen. You see, control is not about ruling them. It's about making them need you to rule. That's the higher game. Any man can seize a throne, but the throne means nothing if it stands alone. The true master binds himself to the structure like a keystone in a vast arch. Remove it and the entire system falls. So ask yourself, who depends on your rule? Whose success is silently linked to your stability? If the answer is no one, then your reign is already fragile. There is a reason kings marry their daughters to rival families. It's not love, it's insurance. When your power becomes a benefit to others, they protect you, not fight you. Not because they like you, but because without you, they lose. This is the 4th truth. Protect yourself by being useful to others' survival, not helpful, not generous, useful. The difference? Help is optional. Use is essential. You don't want to be liked. You want to be irreplaceable. A man who is liked can be betrayed. A man who is needed must be negotiated with. But here's where the art sharpens. You must not let them realize this dependence too clearly. If they see the strings, they may resent the puppet master. So you give just enough subtle reminders of your value, disguised as generosity, competence, stability, like the captain who keeps the ship calm, not by shouting orders, but by standing at the helm with unshakable stillness. Let's anchor this with something you've felt. You've been in a room where someone walks in and nothing needs to be said. The tension adjusts, the atmosphere tightens, people correct their posture. That's not respect, that's conditioning. Long-term presence linked to stability. That is what you must become. Not feared, not loved, necessary. And necessity comes not from what you say, but what you make others afraid to lose. Think of every system of power as a web. Each node supports another. Your job is to position yourself not at the top, but at the center, where all lines cross, where any break shakes the whole frame. And if you are wise, you do this quietly. Invisible threads, gentle pressure, no need to threaten. The threat is already built in, your absence. But beware, for there is a trap even more seductive than control, and that is recognition. You will want to be seen, to be thanked, to be honored for your centrality. Resist, because the moment they see you as the source, they begin to resent you for the balance. They begin to whisper, "Why do we need him at all?" And from whisper to mutiny is just a matter of time. You must master the art of shadow control, influence without attention, impact without authorship, power without ego. Let others take credit for your stability. Let them believe it was their design. Let the loud ones bask in light, while you tighten the gears behind the curtain, because attention is currency, and every time you spend it, you invite audit. Now I will tell you a secret most leaders never hear. The safest ruler is not the most worshipped. It is the one who becomes invisible in the foundation, the one whose name is rarely spoken, but whose absence terrifies them. Your presence must become a habit in the system, like gravity, like air, taken for granted until it's gone. And when they forget to thank you, you smile, because while they celebrate the surface, you own the structure. Machiavelli called this the strength of institutions, not individuals. Build systems that bend toward you, not crowds that cheer. Crowds vanish, systems remain. So instead of demanding loyalty, create environments where betrayal is inconvenient, where your fall would slow progress, not accelerate it, where your removal would hurt the many, not just you. That's insulation, and it's not built with speeches or threats. It's built with design, quiet favors, strategic placements, dependencies no one notices until they need them. This is why the ruthless ruler never moves fast. He moves deliberately, because each step must become a root, and roots are what keep the empire from collapsing during storms. You must not just survive attacks, you must make them unthinkable, because the enemy who hesitates is already yours. To stay in power, you must not only manage perception and necessity, you must master the most dangerous terrain of all, emotion. Not theirs, yours. Because the moment your decisions begin to satisfy your feelings, rather than serve your strategy, your rule has already begun to rot. Power is not lost in war, it is lost in reaction. The uncalculated gesture, the sharp reply, the need to prove something, the need to feel something. Emotion is the weapon your enemies can use against you, only if they know where it lives. So let me make this clear. A man who needs to be understood is weak. A man who needs to be defended is exposed. A man who needs to be right is predictable. And a predictable man can be defeated, not by force, but by manipulation. They will feed your pride, trigger your ego, fan the flame of your rage, and then they will step aside and let you burn yourself down. Machiavelli warned us, it is much safer to be feared than loved when one must choose, but even more dangerous than seeking love is needing vindication. There is no virtue in showing the world they were wrong about you. There is only weakness. The master does not explain, he does not justify, he does not react, he adjusts. You see, your emotional discipline is your political armor, not to seem calm, to be calm, because rage invites resistance, panic invites predators. And even joy, when expressed too openly, invites envy. You are not here to feel, you are here to last. And lasting means learning how to make every emotion serve your structure. You feel betrayal? Good. Store it. Let it sharpen your memory, not your mouth. You feel humiliation? Excellent. That is a file, a case, a pressure point to be used later, not now, because now is not for justice, now is for positioning. Justice is a luxury, timing is a weapon. Wait long enough, and your enemy will offer you the opportunity to dismantle them, in public, in full view, and without ever lifting your voice. Because power is not about striking, it is about holding the blade and knowing precisely when to let it gleam. You are not the storm, you are the sky that hides it. Let me give you a scene. A ruler hears whispers of betrayal from one of his advisors. His generals urge immediate punishment, public disgrace, harsh lesson. But the ruler does nothing. He promotes the man instead, gives him more visibility, more opportunity, and as the traitor rises, his missteps multiply, his enemies grow, his faults expand under the spotlight. And just when the time is perfect, the ruler removes him, not as a tyrant, but as a savior, and the public cheers. That is emotional control. That is chess with human nature, and most men will never master it, because they are too addicted to the performance of power instead of its preservation. They want to show they are strong, instead of being unshakable. Understand this, the most feared ruler is not the one who reacts violently, it is the one who doesn't react at all, because when you cannot be read, you cannot be reached, and when you cannot be reached, they begin to doubt their own footing. That doubt is your fortress, but don't stop there. Let's dive deeper. Your emotional restraint must extend to relationships. Yes, even those closest to you, especially those, because familiarity does not entitle them to your weakness. If anything, proximity demands more discipline, not less. Do not mistake warmth for loyalty. Do not confuse shared history with shared interest. And above all, never allow anyone to see you unraveled, because once they do, they never look at you the same way again. Even those who love you will start to calculate. If he can fall apart once, he can fall apart again. So you build a wall, not of distance, of discipline. Let them feel close, let them laugh with you, let them walk beside you. But the center of your mind, that is fortified, that is sacred, that is where your empire breathes. And it is not open to anyone. This is not loneliness, this is command, because the more you guard your emotional world, the more you force others to guess your next move. And the more they guess, the more they hesitate. That hesitation is time. Time to think, time to plan, time to strike or vanish. The world worships reaction, but power worships pause. So pause, withhold, delay, then act, not to feel better, but to change the terrain. That is how you hold power, without noise, without blood, without enemies you didn't choose. Because the man who controls his emotions controls the battlefield before the war even begins. But there is one final law most rulers ignore until it's too late. The longer you sit on the throne, the more invisible your enemies become. They stop announcing themselves. They stop resisting in the open. They learn you, adapt to you, study your every decision. And if you're careless, they become you, quietly, efficiently, until the day comes when they no longer need you, because they've already replaced you in everyone else's mind. That's the final trap. You become so essential, you forget how replaceable perception can be. So how do you counter it? You evolve, not loudly, but surgically. You change your tactics before they become outdated. You shift alliances before the old ones begin to rot. You adapt your image, not to please them, but to confuse them. You remain unpredictable, not through chaos, but through subtle reinvention, like the serpent that sheds its skin before anyone notices it was ever worn. You must learn how to die symbolically in public, so your enemies mourn the version of you they thought they understood, while the real you builds a second empire in the silence. That is the highest form of control, making even your downfall serve your ascent. And when you master this, you become untouchable, not because you are feared, but because you are ungraspable, a shadow they can never hold, a name they can't agree on, a presence that leaves no fingerprints. Power without enemies does not mean peace, it means precision. You don't win because you fought less. You win because you chose your wars carefully, engineered your alliances invisibly, and moved like mist through a room full of blades. The crowd will never cheer for that kind of power, because they will never see it. But the few who do will bow, because deep down every man fears what he cannot read, every man respects what he cannot predict, and every man obeys what he cannot touch. If you have made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows the loud path to power is also the shortest path to downfall. You already know that staying in power requires more than ambition. It requires architecture, discipline, silence, a refusal to trade long-term dominance for short-term glory. So let me ask you, are you ready to lead without applause? Are you willing to sacrifice recognition for endurance? Are you willing to become the man who cannot be provoked, predicted, or replaced? If this message struck something deep, write it in the comments. I choose to remain. Let's see how many of you are not just chasing power, but building it to last. And remember, the next video is not just content, it's another weapon in your arsenal. Watch it, absorb it, continue the transformation. I'll see you there.